Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs: A Magical Bedtime Story. Once upon a time, in a kingdom where the rivers flowed like silver and the forests whispered secrets to the wind, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. Her skin was as fair as freshly fallen snow, her lips as red as the ripest rose, and her hair as black as ebony wood. But more than her beauty, it was her kindness and gentle heart that made her truly special. Snow White's mother, the queen, had wished for a daughter as lovely as the winter snow. And when Snow White was born, the queen rejoiced. But soon, sadness filled the kingdom, for the queen fell ill and passed away, leaving Snow White's father, the king, to raise her alone. Years passed and the king, hoping to bring warmth back into their home, remarried. His new queen was beautiful, but her heart was cold. She was vain and proud, and she possessed a magic mirror that she would consult each day. Queen. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And the mirror would always reply, "You, my queen, are the fairest of all." The queen would smile, pleased with herself. But as Snow White grew older, her beauty shone even brighter, and her kindness won the love of all who met her. One day, when the queen asked her mirror the same question, the answer was different. "My queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer than you." The queen's heart burned with jealousy. She could not bear the thought of anyone being more beautiful than she was. In her rage, she summoned her most trusted huntsman. "Take Snow White deep into the forest and make sure she never returns." The huntsman's heart ached, for he had always been fond of the gentle princess. But he had no choice, he had to obey the queen. So one bright morning, he led Snow White deep into the forest. When they reached a secluded glade, he stopped and turned to her. "Huntsman," sorrowfully. "Forgive me, dear princess, but I cannot do what the queen has asked." Snow White's eyes widened in fear. "What do you mean?" "Huntsman. The queen wishes you harm, but I cannot bear to hurt you. Run, Snow White. Run far away and never return to the castle." Tears filled Snow White's eyes, but she knew she had no choice. She turned and ran, deeper and deeper into the forest. The trees loomed high above her, their branches twisting like dark fingers. Strange noises surrounded her, owls hooted, twigs snapped, and unseen creatures scurried through the underbrush. She ran until her legs could carry her no further, and then, exhausted and afraid, she collapsed onto a soft patch of moss and fell into a deep sleep. When Snow White awoke, the forest no longer seemed as frightening. Sunlight filtered through the trees, and birds chirped sweetly. As she sat up, she noticed a little cottage nestled between the trees. Curious and hopeful, she made her way toward it. The cottage was tiny but charming, with a bright red door and tiny windows. She knocked softly, but no one answered. Slowly, she pushed the door open and gasped in delight. Inside, everything was small and perfectly arranged: 7 little chairs, 7 little plates, and 7 tiny beds. Snow White. Oh my! Who could live here? She noticed that the cottage was quite messy, with dishes piled high in the sink and dust covering the furniture. Being a kind and thoughtful girl, Snow White decided to clean the cottage. She swept the floors, washed the dishes, and made the beds. Then, feeling tired once more, she lay across the tiny beds and fell fast asleep. As the sun dipped below the horizon, 7 little figures made their way home through the woods. They were dwarfs, hard-working and cheerful miners who spent their days digging for precious gems in the mountains. When they entered their cottage, they stopped in surprise. Doc, stroking his beard. "Something is different. Look. The house is clean. Grumpy. Humph. Someone's been here. I don't like strangers. Happy, pointing. Look, there's someone sleeping in our beds." Snow White stirred, blinking in surprise as she saw the 7 little faces looking at her. Snow White. "Oh. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." Bashful, blushing. "It's all right, miss. But, who are you?" Snow White. My name is Snow White. The queen, she sent me away, and I had nowhere to go. The dwarfs, seeing her sorrow, quickly decided to help. Doc. Then stay with us. You can help keep our home tidy, and in return, we'll protect you. Snow White, smiling. Oh, thank you. You are all so kind. And so, Snow White found a new home with the Seven Dwarfs. Each day, as they left for the mines, they reminded her to be careful. Doc. Remember, the queen may still be searching for you. Don't talk to strangers. Snow White. I promise. But far away in the castle, the queen once again consulted her mirror. Queen. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Magic mirror. My queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White, living with the dwarfs, is fairer than you. The queen's rage knew no bounds. She decided to take matters into her own hands. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, she set off toward the dwarf's cottage, carrying a basket of glistening red apples, one of which was poisoned. When she reached the cottage, she knocked gently. Queen, disguised voice. Sweet child, would you like a taste of my delicious apples? Snow White. Oh. They look lovely. Thank you, kind woman. She took a bite, and as soon as the sweet juice touched her lips, she gasped. The world spun, and she fell to the ground. When the dwarfs returned, they found Snow White lying still and pale. Heartbroken, they built a glass coffin and placed her in it, refusing to bury her. Days passed, and one day, a prince who had heard of Snow White's beauty came upon the coffin. Seeing her, he was overcome with sorrow. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, and as he did, the spell broke. Snow White's eyes fluttered open. Snow White. Where am I? The dwarfs and the prince cheered. Snow White was alive. The prince asked for her hand in marriage, and with joy she agreed. And so, they lived happily ever after. And, dear children, remember, kindness and a pure heart will always triumph. Good night, dear ones. May your dreams be as magical as Snow White's.